What's up everyone, welcome back to the channel this week. Hope you enjoyed last week's video, taking a closer look at the black-tailed crebos, an obvious personal favorite species of colubrid for mine that I've had for a long time, so it was really fun to finally capture some cool breeding footage and get to share that with you. This week, all I have really going on is that some stuff finally arrived for me to keep going on this tank build, so I was going to kind of give you a little bit more of an insight into how I go about doing that and share one that I built for the shop. But before I get diving into that, don't forget, NPR calendars are out. There's only a couple left, so don't forget to get on them while they're still available. Reach out to Eric or NPR Network Instagram or Morelia Python Radio Network.net or .com and get yourself one so you can keep track of what day it is. Because if you're like me, it's really hard to keep track of what day it is. Anyway, let's get stuck into this and do some tank building. Alright, so last time you guys saw this, you saw me kind of putting in some of the shelves and shaping up the skeleton of it, and that's about where it stayed. Although I did manage to tape up all the edges of anything that could potentially be exposed to my layers of coating that I don't want to be coated. So all the prep work is ready. I've just been waiting on some supplies. Now I use a bunch of different size brushes depending on the gaps and spaces that I'm working with. Obviously I've got to have my mixing bucket here, nice little tool that's super handy for just about anything. And then this is what I've been using. I know a lot of the Aussie guys use tile pointing. I have yet to be able to find that here domestically in the States available. So what I've been experimenting with is this pre-mixed thin set mortar. I just buy this on Amazon. It gets shipped to me and got just gray, and that'll be more than enough to coat this. I did an entire paludarium with just shy of one, so it should be more than enough to have some left over and give it, you know, 5-6 layers like it'll do best with. And then in addition, I have some various color mineral earthy dyes that I can mix in there with that gray to get all the different tones, and I imagine I'll probably be using a lot of these ones today because we're gonna go for sort of an arid brigalow East Australian dry forest area. So this is kind of all the stuff that I need. First step is to get a really wet but sort of base primer layer on and let that dry so that from then on all the subsequent layers will adhere really well and we can get into all the cracks, hide that really generic background and turn this into something special. So we'll see how far I can get going on this today, and I'll bring you with you for as much as I can. So I will say before going further into this, if you really want to use a tried and true method, hit up Mike Stefani from Mike's Monitors to figure out the whole Zoopoxy deal. A lot of people seem to be loving that. But anyway, this is kind of the consistency it comes out to. It's very gritty and sandy and kind of squishy, and you basically just add water to get the level of viscosity you need. So for the first layer, I'm going to make it really thin and light, and it's just going to be wet and just go on. And each subsequent layer I'm going to make a little bit thicker and thicker so it'll stay on better and end up adding more grit and texture until we hit the final layer. So this is what it starts out as. So basically trying to get this nice and mixed thoroughly until I find the right consistency, but I'm sure this is a helpful visual aid for some of you guys who've never done this before. It's not as hard as you think, I promise. Just gotta do it. Sometimes winging it works, because literally this is only the second time I've done this, and I know it works. so there you have it. A little scratch coat, primer coat, whatever you want to call it, is done. What that does is it sets a foundation, puts a little bit of the texture in everywhere so that once it dries, the following layers will adhere better. Some friendly advice: always cap this when you're not using it so it doesn't dry out and go to waste. Make sure it's good and sealed. And another tip: always clean your brushes right after you use them to keep them usable after. So next step is to go clean this brush and sit and wait for the next hour or so for this to dry. Alright, so it ended up needing to sit overnight because it was pretty darn wet, but it is solid and dry now. You can see all the color still coming through. The point wasn't to hide it all. The multiple layers will do that. So next objective is to throw down a pretty liquid second layer that we'll start introducing some color with. I'm going to start dark and add the lighter tones afterwards to highlight some of the more final surfaces. So it's going to look funky as you go through it, but trust me, the end result will look great and dynamic with lots of color in there. The second coat, including the first layer of pigment, is down. I was hoping the first primer layer would kind of hold some of these ledges a little bit better, like kind of adhere it, but they're still kind of flimsy. So we'll see how this layer goes and how it dries. If it holds some of them better, great. If not, I might end up pulling like this ledge, and that one, but we'll see. It's all an experimental creative process. I don't mind removing ledges because the species that's going to go in here isn't too much of a ledge using species, and the more I get rid of, the more space I have for the branches that I'm going to use. So that'll be kind of interesting. We'll see how it all plays out. But here's an example of some of the branches that'll be going in here once it's all done. And these animals prefer to rest on these, so I expect this is more important than the background. However, I do want the background to be usable, functional for them. So we're just gonna keep going and see how this works. All right, so on another thing I forgot to do / show is everything's just siliconed in here, and eventually I will paint this so you don't see any of that. But I didn't have any expanding foam at the time, so I was hoping I could fill some of these big areas with scraps of foam. And although it filled some, I think if I don't address this, it'll be a problem down the line. So I have some expanding foam that'll be coming, and it'd be better to have, you know, added it before I started painting, but it's really not going to cause any problems. I'll just pop it in there, fill in the areas, and then let it do its thing, rip it off and contour it to fit, and it'll just be some more texture that gets added in. But because this is going to need some more time to dry and I don't have time to whip this all out today, this is going to be part one of at least a 2, maybe 3-part series build video. So I hope you guys don't mind just seeing me build something and not really getting too many animals in this video. Here's a gratuitous Reptar taking a nap shot for you. Can't say there weren't animals in this video, but anyway, hope people are at least enjoying seeing the build and how I do this. A lot of people do it different ways. There's tons of great videos online of people doing tank builds and stuff, so it's just how I do it. Every time I do it, it ends up coming out a little bit differently. The process evolves as it does, and that's kind of the fun of it all. So don't be afraid to get started and get stuck in on a project, and just let it guide you. So have fun building some stuff. Make sure you're having fun keeping your reptiles. That's the #1 thing. So anyway, thanks for joining me this week, and hope you enjoyed this. See you next week in part 2. Later.